That Red Sox game last night may have been something special. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbett, and thank you very much for clicking on this video. The Red Sox, ladies and gentlemen, were able to salvage themselves a series, which honestly feels pretty incredible considering how that game started. They still dropped the first two to the Philadelphia Phillies, and obviously that still puts them coming home with a 2-4 record on this road trip to the top of the AL. However, to their overall record, it puts them at 55-49 on the season, 6 games over 500 still. Very importantly, still in a wild card position, 1.5 games above both the Rays and the Texas Rangers in the AL, 6 games back of first place at the moment. I'm going to be honest with you, right now my score checking or my standings checking, which is happening basically at the end of every single game at this point, isn't really about the first place in this division, right? I don't know how many people are really paying attention to the first place in this division, but I just wanted to throw that in here. And I do genuinely think that last night's win may have been one of the biggest wins of the Red Sox season, maybe genuinely the biggest win of the Red Sox season. And I know what some of you guys are thinking, oh boy, here we go, right? Corbin's sitting there and he's overreacting to one win when the Red Sox lost this series. And there were some legitimate problems in this series. And you're absolutely right to some degree, right? There are absolutely problems that I think are now in the spotlight for the Red Sox as they head into the deadline. But this game was genuinely big, and I do have legitimate reasoning to back that up. The first one being that last night's game felt like a redemption for a lot of people on this Red Sox team, including really the Red Sox themselves. This whole redemption arc thing started with Romy Gonzalez, who had been so far past the All-Star break here, even going back into the Tampa Bay Rays series, 0 for 19 with a walk and 8 strikeouts in his last 19 plate appearances, right? That was a guy who was really going through it. He just simply could not see the ball well. He came up in an extremely big spot for the Boston Red Sox, and he delivered, right? With maybe the biggest home run he's had in a Red Sox uniform up until this point, with an absolutely monster grand slam off of Jesus Luzardo. This was a moment in time where you sit there and you talk about how did the Red Sox fix themselves, right? You go 2-4 on this road trip. You're hanging on to a wild card spot. How do you put yourselves right? Having Romy Gonzalez be that guy against left-handed pitching that he's been really the entire season is a big step in doing that. To see him do it and get himself right in a really big moment for the Red Sox, I think is absolutely something to celebrate here, but it didn't end there, right? Carlos Narvaez had probably his worst defensive series for the Red Sox so far in a uniform at this point. The first game, obviously, I think you still lose that one, but ends in a catcher's interference, which, by the way, I still don't love the fact that it was catcher's interference, considering the fact that it wasn't even considered a swing until they realized he had touched the catcher's mitt, right? In my opinion, if he didn't technically swing at the baseball, it probably shouldn't have been a catcher's interference, but that's how game one ends, right? In extra innings, again, the Red Sox lose on the road. In the second game here, you had Bryce Harper steal home. It ended up being catcher's interference and a balk. Obviously, again, catcher's interference catching up to Narvaez, but I mean, he was safe either way, right? That run was scoring regardless of what that call ended up being. Not a great look for Narvaez, and all of a sudden, it sort of looked like, hey, the wear and tear of this season, the fact that Carlos Narvaez is right now catching more innings than he's ever caught in his entire career here is catching up to him, right? And that's a big problem for the Red Sox because Narvaez has been a really, really massive part of this team, both offensively and defensively throughout the entirety of this season so far. However, you come into the last game, you get an opportunity at the top of the 11th to do something about it, right? To sit there and say, this isn't the end of my season. I'm not going to just slowly disappear here. I'm going to do something. And what does he do? He hits a line drive, absolute cruise missile into the bleachers and gives the Red Sox a 2-0 lead, right? These are two guys who are extremely important to whether or not the Red Sox succeed or not succeed so far this year. And for them to be able to come up in big moments and finally deliver for what feels like the first time, or not feels like, it is the first time since the All-Star break, is really, really big for the Boston Red Sox. But on top of that, this really felt like a redemption game for the Red Sox as a whole, because we talked about it, right? The Red Sox have not won a single game in extra innings on the road so far this year. Coming into that extra innings game, they were 0-9 on the season. It felt like every single time the Red Sox got into extra innings on the road, something funky happened, right? Whether it be some sort of misplay defensively, or whether it be the Red Sox have a big moment offensively and then give it up on the pitching side of things, or the exact opposite, right? The pitching looks incredible, but the Red Sox can't do anything offensively, and you end up losing that game. I mean, just take a look at the first game for a prime example of what I'm talking about, right? Red Sox, if they had a healthy Bregman, probably don't go into extra innings in that game in general, but they didn't, right? And they end up in extra innings. They put together 3 miserable at-bats in the top of the 10th, and then the bottom of the 10th, Jordan Hicks is all over the place. It ends in catcher's interference, right? That's not a normal way to end baseball games, and it was, through the regular season so far, one of those things where you just expected the Red Sox to lose going into extra innings. You needed to be able to compete throughout the entirety of a game, not just, we talked about this at the beginning of the season, right, where they'd go 99% of the way and then just simply not be able to get that 1% done, and it ends up with a L in the loss column as opposed to a W in the win column, right? This game was different, and it was really, really big because it was the difference between a Red Sox getting swept and the Red Sox salvaging a series, and what they were able to do in here, where they were able to get big moments from guys you needed big moments from, and you were able to secure things on the pitching side of things, which I also think is almost equally important to what the Red Sox were doing offensively. Weiser was able to keep the game tied, right? Especially against the top of the order in the Phillies, which is maybe one of the best 1, 2, 3 in Major League Baseball. Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, and Bryce Harper. You were able to get those guys out enough where you were able to keep the game tied and give the Red Sox a chance to win this game. And Alcala, we're talking about a redemption arc. He came in with an almost 7 ERA from the Twins, and since joining the Red Sox is a 0.69 ERA, right? That's really, really impressive statistics. And that's really what the difference was in this game, was you were able to get legitimate bullpen pitching, especially after, Lucas Giolito has one of his worst starts in a very long time. You're able to come out here and keep the Red Sox in the game. And I think that was absolutely huge and a major part of why the Red Sox were able to win this one. So overall, I mean, you look at it for reason one here, you say absolutely this was a big game for the Boston Red Sox, but it's not the only reason this was a big game. The second reason this was, in my opinion, one of the biggest games of the season so far for Boston was because of the fact of something we've talked about 1,000 times, and that is coming out of the break, the Red Sox probably have the toughest stretch in Major League Baseball, right? And I think ultimately in a lot of people's minds, it wasn't so much, okay, they need to dominate this stretch. It was simply they need to survive this stretch, right? They need to find a way to not get absolutely swept up in the chaos that is this schedule and end up totally tanking their season. And then this stretch isn't done by any means, not yet so far, but so far that's exactly what they're doing. And I think a really reasonable way to look at this, and I think a lot of people looking at this were saying they need to show me something here, right? They need to compete against these top dogs in the NL, and I need to see something out of them. And ultimately, they didn't really do that, right? They still lost both of these series, but at the same time, too, they came out of this 2-4 when they very easily and probably should have come out of this 1-5 or maybe even 0-6, right? And I think there's a big difference between this year's team and last year's team, where you talk about that collapse after the deadline. Last year's team, they just simply couldn't find a way to stop the bleeding. This year, that's what they've been able to do. And I know 2-4 isn't exactly a fantastic record, but I think it's still big, right? You come out of this series still a game and a half up in a wild card spot. And obviously, that isn't anywhere close to legitimate breathing room here, right? You can't sit back and say, okay, we've got some space to work with here. But at the same time, too, it still feels much, much different than having come out of this series 1-5 with a half game lead, or even worse, 0-6 with a 0 game lead, and you're probably a game behind the Tampa Bay Rays and the Texas Rangers, right? You were able to do enough here where you were able to survive the first leg of this sort of gauntlet the Red Sox are going through. To me, yes, I understand the idea of, hey, you needed to compete against these teams, right? You needed to show that you can beat these guys to be able to, instill some confidence in not only the fan base, but this front office, that this is a team that's worth investing in. And ultimately, they didn't do that. So I understand that there's still going to be some negativity surrounding this team. But I sit here with this and I say, I didn't expect the Red Sox to go in there and sweep the Phillies or sweep the Chicago Cubs or anything like that. I expected them to compete. And you look at this series, and again, you talk about it, right? You end up losing the series, yes. But in the first game, you went toe-to-toe with Zach Wheeler. Walker Buehler gives you an excellent performance. The Red Sox actually score some runs. You have a fully healthy Alex Bregman. You're probably talking about winning this series for the Boston Red Sox, right? Because the bullpen was able to shut things down outside of Jordan Hicks in that 10th inning. So if you were able to have scored that run, you probably win that game. I think that's what I want. That's what I'm looking at when, hey, can you compete against these top dogs? And you did, right? You only got really blown out in this 6-game stretch in one game against the Chicago Cubs, and that really only happened in the backstretch of that inning. The offense is going to be what the offense is, right? I think looking at this overall, we've talked about this 100,000 times. This is a young, inexperienced offense with a lot of key pieces being matchmaking type players, right? Romy, Rob Refsnyder. This is what you're going to get, right? You're going to get this roller coaster type of emotions from this offense where they're up really high one week and they're down really low the other week. The ability to be able to find some sort of middle ground is huge for the Red Sox, and I do think they found some middle ground in this series. So yes, you could sit there and you could talk about, okay, what are the negatives here? Well, the defense was still a bit of an issue, right? You had some base running mistakes. Starting pitching wasn't fantastic in this series. I think we can all agree on that, especially between Fitz and Giolito, aside from the fact that Walker Buehler really gave you a redemption kind of start here against a really, really tough Phillies team. You sit there with that and you say, okay, like that stands out absolutely, right? The offense still not really being a major juggernaut that they were coming into the break is absolutely still on the top of the table. But to me, what this series indicated and the fact that they were able to salvage one of these games, despite the fact that they lost this series, is that they can go toe-to-toe with these teams. They're just one step behind, right? And that one step could legitimately be one legitimate impact starter, maybe another high leverage reliever, and a bat, right? You add the three of those things, and all of a sudden you're probably going toe-to-toe with all of these guys. And I think, in my opinion, it just solidifies the fact that this Red Sox team is absolutely worth buying into. So I get it, right? I get the negativity, and I think there's absolutely reasons to be negative. But at the same time, too, I think you also have to acknowledge the fact that despite the negatives, the Red Sox are still in a playoff position coming out of this stretch. The Red Sox still had some really big moments in this stretch, and the Red Sox, for the most part, did compete against these teams during this stretch. But unfortunately, there was really one big negative to come out of this series, and that was an injury to one of their key rookies. Because amidst this big win for the Boston Red Sox, Marcelo Meyer exited the game early, midway through here, with what the Red Sox are calling right wrist discomfort. The reality is, at the moment, at least at the time I'm recording this video, they have no idea, right? No one really knows what's going on with Marcelo Meyer. Apparently, Meyer injured his wrist on his swing in the final at-bat that resulted in a walk, helping to set up Romy Gonzalez's grand slam, saying, quote, "I just felt a little tight grab in my wrist when I took a swing in my second at-bat. I knew I couldn't do anything after that, so I just called it a game." To me, not a great sign, right? The fact that it was a non-contact hitting injury really opens the door for that hamate bone to be part of this equation, and if that's the case, Marcelo Meyer's probably done for the season. We don't know yet. He's scheduled to get MRIs probably today, so most likely we're going to get some information this afternoon or potentially tomorrow. Keep an eye out for that video because we'll obviously be making one, but it really does sound like, at the end of the day, I mean, he came into the media session with a splint on his wrist, right? He was pretty down about it. It wasn't exactly like he was pretty optimistic about what it could be. He said he'd been icing it. He's hoping that it's not a crazy injury. I think at the end of the day, we're probably going to see some sort of IL stint for Meyer, and that absolutely sucks because, yes, the bat wasn't incredible at this point. It was a .230 average with a .269 on base percentage and a .405 slug for an .884 OPS plus, which isn't exactly incredibly impactful, but at the same time, too, his defense was, right? His defense at second base, his defense at third base, they were truly at times game-saving defense from Marcelo Meyer, and losing that is obviously going to put some pressure on the rest of the guys in the infield to be able to get something done here. The other thing that kind of sucks about it is you don't have one truly clear answer as to who's going to play second base for you going forward. If he's out for a pretty extended period of time here, Romy Gonzalez can play second base, absolutely. Obviously, Cedon can play second base, but you really don't want that guy playing second base on a regular basis. Outside of that, you got Nick Sogard, who's, in my opinion, probably the most realistic replacement for Meyer at the moment. Since going down, he's hitting .283 with a .381 on base percentage and a .425 slug in AAA. You've got Christian Campbell, but he has been struggling really, really hard in AAA since his demotion. Vaughn Grissom, he's been hitting really well lately. Is this the first time we're going to see him in a Red Sox uniform this year? And then you got David Hamilton as well, who I think we all know what David Hamilton's capable of at the major league level, right? And I don't know how excited I would be if Hamilton was the answer. So Red Sox have really big questions to answer if Marcelo Meyer's out for a little bit. But again, right now, it's just sort of speculation. We'll see. right? I'm going to keep optimism until I can't keep optimism anymore, but I really hate this fact from Marcelo Meyer. But again, this is probably going to be a pretty big move for the Red Sox in the next couple of days. But overall, again, you could take the bad, you could take the negative. I'm going to sit here and say the Red Sox survived, and I think that's a pretty good thing. And I think this final game for the Red Sox was something special, but that's just my opinion. So let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think about this? What do you think about the series? What do you think about last night's game? Do you think it's as important as I did? And what do you think about the Marcelo injury? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton. Best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you guys want to listen instead of watch, all you got to do is head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the Red Seats.